Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and if the devs are looking at that title and thinking, oh, he's exaggerating. Surely he's exaggerating. We don't hate Ice. We don't hate Ice. Why would we ever hate Ice? This is the impression that I get from you. If you're a dev watching this. That's sort of where you're at. That's sort of where you're at with Ice mains in the community, and we don't like it. We have been repeatedly shafted every single update since 2020, and we're tired of it. But we're also not optimistic that you're gonna fix it, so I don't know. This is mostly just gonna be a rant type video then. I've decided to split this up into two sections. One is going to be a PvE related section that'll come first, and then the second will be a PvP related section because there is a lot to go over for both, and I honestly don't even think I got it all. I kind of just wrote this whole document out in like an hour or so. So yeah, there's a lot to go over for both modes, so let's start with the PvE section. Frost Giant has been trash forever. I have talked about this at length before, but Frost Giant needs to get completely reworked. Like you can see here, 460 ice damage to all, and stun them all for a round, because that's totally useful. I can definitely use this in Frostbiter over there. He will definitely get stunned by this spell, and it won't show him as stun immune. Trust. Source, trust me, bro. Like, if they would just take out the AoE stun and increase its damage by, like, let's say 185. Let's say 185, we would be cool with that. Every single ice band would be cool with that if it lost its utility in favor of, 185 more damage, which would bring this up to 645, which I think it's totally fine. It was already dumb enough that Giant got nerfed when the other 6 schools got their 7-pip AoE spells either buffed or reworked or left alone, but I'm hopeful that Art 2 spellments could finally be a way out for us, and that is going to be, honestly, the earliest I can see a Giant buff happening, and of course we'll probably need to slave away at some boss in the hive for our whole lives to get there, but once we do get there, it won't be so bad. Granted, having to farm up late Art 2 boss to upgrade the spell is extremely counterintuitive because the spell is at its worst in the second arc, especially with Azteca. But at this point, I will honestly take it. I mean, a buff's a buff, right, Sam? Any damage upgrade is a good upgrade, and I'm honestly a little surprised that flat out telling the devs that Giant was overvalued but underpowered back in, like, at the end of October, that somehow wasn't enough to get them to think about reworking it. Of course, we started hearing them describe Hydra Path B as exactly like that for a time, being overvalued yet underpowered. So that was fun. So, I mean, take that how you will, but I am going to take that as we heard you, but we didn't listen to you, as it usually is with them. There's also been other passive nerfs to Ice over the years, one of which was when all the school-specific blades got tuned, and for those unaware, Stormblade used to be 30%, Fire and Mythblade used to be 35%, and the rest minus Balance Blade were 40%. And at some point in there, around the spring of 2021, the main 6 were standardized at 35%, and whoever did that must not have been considering the reason why some of the blades were stronger, because they were meant to be that way in order to help the lower damage schools deal, marginally more damage. We've also lost our status as the school with the most health, losing that to the School of Life about a year and a half ago. I was really never sure why. I guess I just really wanted to push Ice's resistance, but it doesn't help that our resist really is not that much better than other schools. It's also a bit of a redundant stat, considering all the focus is on damage and pierce, which we also get the least of by far, to absolutely no one's surprise. Speaking of our stats, the gap between our offensive stats and the other schools continues to grow when we're already lacking a strong AoE hit, and as shown in my best setup videos this month, Ice can get 240 damage and 19 pierce if we use all 5 circle sockets for damage jewels. Storm, as I showed y'all, can get 277 damage with 29 pierce without any set bonuses, which is a difference of 37 damage and 10 pierce. That is completely and utterly insane. Storm deserves it, of course, since they're a damage school, but Ice just falls even further behind, and honestly, at the rate we're going, A Frost Giant buff isn't going to make us any more desirable in team-ups because we will actually just do that much less damage. So, you know, it's like even if we do get a buff on Frost Giant, it still won't be enough because the stat gap is rapidly increasing. Because before, I think 193 was the most that an ice could get at Novus, compared to the 220 that a storm could get with, you know, set bonuses and all that, which was a difference of only 27 as opposed to the now 37 that we're at. So tomorrow's video is going to be the life setup, which is the next school up from ice in terms of damage, and spoiler alert, they get 244 damage with 22 pierce, which is still higher than ice now, still higher than ice, despite now being the school that's supposed to get less damage than us. If the design team is trying to make life deal less damage than ice, which we can tell is happening by the fact that the life Reaver ring doesn't even give any more damage than the Eon ring, while the ice ring does, it's like why aren't they trying to boost ice to actually make it happen? A combination of the worst stats and the worst damage has turned ice into the definitive last place when it comes to ranking how good every school is in PvE, and I hope that this changes soon. So now let's talk about PvP, and as someone who played in 2020, I have seen a slew of nerfs to ice happen, and they really all started in that year. Ice was still top 3 when I quit, but I came back this year to ice being practically at the bottom in the last pre-Wallaroo season, and now, of course, we really are at the very bottom, which has been very disheartening as an ice main for now 13 years, but I guess we've never exactly been great in PvE, but I mean, our saving grace ever since Darkmoor has been our performance in PvP, mainly because of how good Resist became for a while and how good Weaver was for the longest time. Now, of course, being 7th out of 7 in both modes, there is no reason to ever make an Ice Wizard, and that's sad to me. It really is. Some of the nerfs were deserved, like Weaver's damage and 75% tower shield coming down to 50, but others, not so much. Back in late 2020, the devs were obsessed with banning just about everything they considered to be broken, in quotes. Minus 90 Ifrits, Aftershock TCs, which are 4-pip earthquakes basically, Enfeeble TCs, and Shift TCs all got banned, which was cool, and many supported this, but in the same update, the devs had this to say. Obviously, until we have a chance to overhaul Resist in a stat audit, which we feel is the single most important change to ice, we'll likely have to take targeted shots at ice along the way. That is the intent with these no PvP cards. We're just looking to take a bit of the offensive tempo away from ice. We realize this is insufficient to fix ice. Nevertheless, this is a trend that you should expect to see us continue in both the short and long term as we try to shift ice back into a more defensive school identity. Targeted shots at ice. I stood staunchly against this back then, and my last video that wasn't just some one-off before I came back last September was basically just me taking shots at the devs for almost 16 minutes over it. These targeted shots from December 2020 have caused a ripple effect. Cards that were banned in that update have, contrary to what the developers have said, remained banned ever since, and these bans hold us back even today. Ice Bird, Frozen Bats, Ice Elf, Arctic Zilt, all gone. The first two were essential hit buffs. They allowed us to keep up pressure in a meta defined by keeping your opponent on your toes. The only other school that had their hit buff removed was Fire, having lost Fire Beetle earlier that year, so it was never really about making ice specifically more defensive. It was about knocking the best schools down and doing nothing to nerf the schools that rose in their place over the years. In addition to Ice Elf, a very solid pressuring tool, Polar Swarm would later get banned, while nothing was done about Black Widow, a spell that has become a key part of Death's arsenal in the present day scene. In yesterday's video, I was able to pressure a myth with low pip overtimes and threaten my 11 pip shield gambit being Doom Oni, which led to honestly a pretty easy win. I could not do this on an ice though, because I need to get all the way to 14 pips exactly, and then pray I pip conserve a Frostbite in order to continue threatening my Scion. I'd also only be able to do it once as well, even if I did pip conserve, as I would then have to use a 1 pip hit to get rid of that new pip. Frost Beetle actually fits the bill there, but that would be one more thing that I would have to pull, rather than keeping up the pressure with any 0 hit move like I would do on my Death. I also can't pressure a Scion and Shrike because of how our stats and how Beetle works with Backlash, so the devs have also mentioned that they do not want to touch any quote-unquote legacy cards or cards that are technically out of identity for their respective schools. They were just added a while back. But the problem is, that now means all the legacy cards they did touch in years past are permanently stuck in their current state. Banned, in most cases, when it comes to Ice. Other schools like Death now have these utility cards that are out of identity and can easily set up shield gambits with them and keep pressure with them due to their low pip cost and high pressure value. I will never advocate for these cards to be banned. I think having them adds a level of skill that the game wouldn't see otherwise if everyone was forced to stick to this new, identity nonsense that the devs keep trying to push. But I will advocate for every school to have cards like these because, again, it raises the skill ceiling and makes people put more thought into how they play the game. And Ice being able to efficiently pressure a shield gambit, which is our main identity by the way, should be something that we can do. Unbanning some of the cards that got banned ages ago will help with that. Polar Swarm is really the easiest example. Like, it doesn't do nearly as much damage, a total of 340, which is like nothing. So, the damage concern is out. It is technically off identity, but the way I see things, if Death can rightfully have their low pip overtimes, so should we. Ice is severely held down by how small our library has become. You can really just consider Ratbeard to be Julius Caesar and Ice to be the Library of Alexandria, if you will. We used to have a wide array of cards to use to our advantage, but most of it has been destroyed in the pursuit of putting us down and keeping us there because I guess we were on top for too long or something. On that note, the Arc 1 Spellements could have been a saving grace for us in that regard, but they were badly butchered in both iterations. At the moment, proactive moves are much better for gaining control of a match than reactive moves, and at the moment, Ice does not have any pure proactive moves in our rank 1 through 6 arsenal. We do have Frost Beetle and Colossus, but both of those require shields to set up to make them into proactive moves, so you kind of just, you telegraph it a little bit. It's like, people will sort of know what you're doing if you set up a tri-shield and then, send a Colossus, for example. It's like, they'll prepare for that, they'll keep their shield counters on deck, that type of deal. And for what it's worth, the two spells are pretty solid for what they do, but, they are still considerably worse than a Vampire, for example, and our reactive moves are also pretty decent. Snowman is kind of our saving grace if we ever go up against a Vampire Spammer, which have been getting more rare in favor of the usual Aura Poison Wraith combo, but, Wyvern is a pretty good blade counter that can help us set up a better hit, and then Blighthound obviously is honestly pretty good when the conditional is fully met, but the problem is our opponent has to do something for us to be able to use our reactive spells well, and when facing an Ice, you know what they can counter, so you kind of just don't want to play right into it. So those are just some of the problems that Ices face in the arena, and I can't really say I'm optimistic about our chances going forward. The devs are notoriously bad at listening to feedback, and their vendetta against Ice from over 3 years ago now is still keeping us down in 2024, and the point of this video was more so to rant than to actually make a call to action, because I've been shown time and time again that the developers do in fact hate Ice, and that is no exaggeration. But yeah, that is going to wrap up. I hope y'all enjoyed this little rant. I hope that the devs also eventually do something, but it's been almost 4 years, man. I'm not optimistic. I don't think I can trust them. I don't think I was ever able to trust them, but we'll just have to see where it goes. Hopefully, with the Arc 2 Spellements, the developers make good choices, and they could maybe give Ice a solid higher pip hit to work with. Maybe they could bring Lord of Winter back to its former glory, I don't know. But until then, Ice is going to be bad in both PvE and PvP, so I don't know, man. Well, I just hope, man. But yeah, thank y'all for watching. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.